Good evening, Mr. Pirro. You have consistently promoted the idea that America was built on Judeo-Christian values. However, as a devout Christian, I have difficulty accepting the term, given Judaism's rejection of Jesus. Christians believe Jesus Christ is God. In contrast, the Talmud, a central Jewish holy book, teaches that Jesus is burning in hellfire and excrement. And while the New Testament tells us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us, Sovereign 15 of the Talmud states that even the best of the Gentiles should be killed. Given these irreconcilable differences, why do you insist on using this oxymoronic term?
Okay, so first of all, that's a really bad read of the Talmud. Second of all, the notion that you can cite any text in support of the idea that Judaism broad writ is somehow disdainful or hateful of Christians or of people who are not Jewish is in fact a tremendous misread of Judaism over the centuries and particularly today. I can cite sections in the New Testament that I find personally problematic. I can certainly cite segments in the Quran that I find personally problematic. The truth is I could probably find places in the Old Testament that I find personally problematic. That does not speak to what Judaism is and its historic impact on the world. Judaism is the foundation of Christianity. Jesus himself acknowledged this. The New Testament acknowledges this. The notion that Judaism and Christianity are somehow completely delinked and teach two completely separate lessons ignores the fact that the Old Testament is part and parcel of the New Testament. Sure, Christians and Jews think different things, of course. Otherwise, I'd be a Christian or you'd be a Jew. If we thought completely the same thing, then presumably we would have the exact same religion. But the notion that Judaism and Christianity are completely delinked is wrong. As far as miscitations from the Talmud, or even citations of texts that are written in the year 500 CE at a time when Jews were being persecuted by Christians in the Roman Empire, that seems to me a real stretch to get to the idea that Jews today are overall hateful of Christians. I'm not sure that there's anybody in America, personally speaking, who has pushed more people back to church than me. I really don't know that there is anybody who's done that. I tell Christians literally all the time to go to church. I tell Christians all the time to re-engage with their faith. I think it is deeply, deeply important that they do. I don't try to convert people to Judaism because that's actually forbidden in Jewish law. I'm not supposed to convert people to Judaism. So I know there's a group of people who spend all day online cherry-picking bad lines from the Talmud, a text that they have no familiarity with, and then trying to spin that into a giant myth about how Jews are seeking the extermination of Christians or some other bizarre conspiracy theory. It's a lie, it's stupid, and the Judeo-Christian values of the nation are quite real because, once again, Judaism and Christianity have an awful lot in common.
I literally cannot find a single thing he said that I take issue with, that I find inaccurate. He is far more accurate. And in fact, his criticism, and I'll just pick out one here because there's a lot to talk about, but the Talmud fetish, it really gets a bit ridiculous. How long is the Talmud? Isn't it like 6,000 pages? I mean, pagination depends on how it's printed, of course, but it is this monumental bookshelf of a thing, which includes debates and dialogues between various rabbis where they're interpreting the Torah and spinning things off, et cetera, et cetera. The idea that any of these people have read this thing or really understand it in its context is ridiculous. When they always talk, I've always heard this. I've heard this for 20 years from white nationalists. Jesus is burning in shit in hell according to the Jews or whatever. And they found this one thing. It's like going into Shakespeare's complete works and saying, first we kill all lawyers, which is a line from, I think, Noble Kinsman. I forgot where that's from. Anyway, it's said by a character. It's also a funny line that you can quote. Is like, kill all lawyers, Shakespeare. It's a funny line, but to say that he is endorsing that, or to say that like sums up his opinion on the law or whatever, is absurd. And they just constantly do this because they want their enemy to be extreme and unreasonable and just have undying hatred of them. It's a sort of kind of like libs of TikTok attitude towards the Jews, where you don't depict, you don't reasonably accurately depict what's going on in, say, the Supreme Court right now over transgender issues, or liberals or whatever, you basically find extreme, likely mentally ill and or stupid people, claiming that they want to turn their dog trans or something. And then you put this out and it acts as this sort of pornography, this like self-assuring pornography for conservatives that they can be like, oh, these are the libs. This is the libs. The same thing is going on here, where you look at that one passage from the Talmud, you're like, this is how Jews, view us or something. Well, why is it that they've always wanted to live in your country, at least to a large extent of their history? They also lived with Muslims. They were arguably more successful with Muslims in the Ottoman Empire. But regardless, why is it that they are participating in civic society? Why is it that they're not just killing you on sight, when they see you? Why is this? Why can you find important Jews throughout world history, not least of which is Ben Shapiro or Dennis Prager, who have ultimately praised Christianity? Why is that? Why is that? I mean, you want to go back to this text that you barely understand and find some salacious, like, one-liner and just repeat that again and again and again and again. I've really gotten sick of it. If someone starts quoting the burning and shit thing, I know exactly who they are. They're some sort of Christian Zionist, or not necessarily. They might be a Christian Zionist, so they're probably not actually. Some sort of Christian nationalist who wants to just overlook all of these serious issues about their own faith and, like, I'll just say it, demonize the Jews in a very unfair way that's totally unproductive and doesn't actually lead anywhere. But anyway, those are my thoughts on that issue. I have more to say on this whole thing.
Yeah, there's a whole lot to unpack with that clip and some of your thoughts there. I mean, just notice in the audience, Ben Shapiro got a round of applause after he did that. That guy's questions and the way he came at him like that wasn't a big W. And even the people that shared it around online, it's not a big W. Like, you want to hate Ben Shapiro and say Ben Shapiro hates Christians so much, and he says, no, he doesn't. He's proud. He tells everybody to go to church. He correctly points out that Christianity is a branch of Judaism, and they both share the Old Testament and all of the foundations of Messianic, apocalyptic Judaism and Yahwehism. So, like, if these online Christians want to deny that the Judeo-Christianity, the term, doesn't mean you believe all the exact same things or you're the exact same religion. It means Christianity is a version of Judaism, which is a fact, right, which they want to deny. They want to deny Jesus is Jewish, and Christianity started as an exclusively Jewish movement based on the Jewish prophecies. And I wouldn't go as far to say as like Ben Shapiro had nothing wrong there. I think he's downplaying the overall sentiment in the Talmud and the Torah towards the Gentiles and like what Judaism is all about, which basically is all the world worshiping the God of Israel. That's why he promotes Christianity, because it worships the God of Israel, right, and affirms the idea that the Jews were ever chosen. And it's funny, the two biggest Zionist Jews in right-wing media, basically Prager and Ben Shapiro, are vying for the title of who've helped corral more goyim into the pews of the churches.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, we got you. And then, to just throw out, they'll never criticize the Torah, too. They'll only focus, they'll make stretches or exaggerate or take stuff out of context in the Talmud, but never criticize the Torah. And they won't even bring up the stuff in the Talmud that like should be brought up first and foremost. It's like one group of one sect of Jews mad that the other sect of Jews like has a mean story about their fairy tale. And like most people are just, they see the way the Christians treat the Jews and they like have sympathy for them. They go, oh, blaming them for killing God. And it's like, for the Christians to sit back and pearl clutch that like one rabbi wrote in the Talmud hundreds of years after Christianity, like something nasty about Jesus, when there's obviously a schism and polemics happening. It's like, well, what were the Christians saying about the Jews? That they worship the devil and they killed God and they're the synagogue of Satan and all this mean stuff. And then you go, oh, how dare you don't love Jesus and love the Messiah. And they do basically agree about it on everything except of this figure being the Messiah and him also being God. And guess who else doesn't believe that? A lot of normal white people, a lot of normal people all around the world. So they have all this hatred, hostility for Jews, but then they also carry that over for you and me and
Yeah.
other Europeans that don't want to bow down to the king of the Jews. So really, they're just playing the retarded, schizo controlled opposition, while ultimately at the end of the day, still like upholding and supporting Jewish theological supremacy. And Ben Shapiro's right. You can't de-link the two. They're completely interconnected. Christianity is
Well,
all
some
dependent on.
people have, but these people don't. For instance, there is apparently a Gnostic belief. Now, keep in mind, uh, many of the Gnostics were Jews themselves.
Right.
There seems to be at least and all of the early Christians are Jews. There does seem to be a Johannite, a John line of thinking that you aren't from my father, you're from your father, the devil. Basically, there is some thread there that you can grab onto. The problem is, if you grab onto that thread to extend the metaphor, it's going to pull you in a direction that you don't really want to go. So there is a sort of Gnostic belief of the of a sort of Yahweh as a kind of evil god in a way. Like there's Elohim at the creation of the universe, and it's good. Everything's great. And then Yahweh enters the scene, and he's torturing Adam and Eve and onward, and then committing genocide, and it gets even worse from there. And there's a different there is, to be fair here, a sort of different type of God in the Gospels, a theos. Maybe you could say, if you're going to really push this line, we should discard the Old Testament, because the Old Testament is shot full with Yahweh, and it's shot full with Yahweh's misdeeds even against Jews. Remember, he
Well,
goes after
Christians
the
don't have a
Canaanites.
problem with Yahweh in the Old Testament, though.
Exactly. So if you're going to take that line, it's going to take you into a branch of Gnosticism. And I've seen some people, I'm forgetting his name at the moment. He seems like a nice man. We corresponded just a little bit on Twitter DMs, who's really pushing this line of he's an Australian guy. You've probably come
Israel
across.
Anderson.
Exactly. Yeah. He's really pushing this line. Jesus' father is not Yahweh. Yahweh is something like the devil, if not the devil himself. He can't be the devil himself, because Yahweh corresponds with the devil in the book of Job. But anyway, but he's bad. and and so there's a sort of like true Christian, Christianity, Christism in an almost new form of getting away from the Old Testament and leaving it behind, and rejecting the Pharisees or the Jews in general, and rejecting Yahweh, and moving towards a new way. But none of these Christians want to do that. And every Christian organization of any volume or legitimacy totally rejects this. That Bible in your pews includes the Old Testament, last time I checked, which is also called the Hebrew Bible, and includes the Torah, which is the foundation of everything. So it's just I don't know, like these guys like that, the Chad based Christian, who kind of almost like looks like the meme. He's got the fascia haircut and the crucifix. He's like, "You're offending us, man. Like we think he's God and you killed him, you bastards." Like that kind of thing. It's like a good line, I guess, but it doesn't have any leg to stand on.
It's cartoonish. It makes opposition to Jews look insane, is what it does. Your main problem is that the Jews killed God, which you needed to die according to God's prophecy, so you could be saved and have your magic blood and your sins atoned for. And you're going to be and I mean, it's like Judas betrays Jesus and has him killed, and Judas, it was originally Judah. So it's like allegorical fiction. It never even happened. And this is what their main concern is. The real issue we should have is that they have their God, and they want to have supremacy of their God via God's Messiah. And you're worshiping the God that was meant to conquer you all along, and you're getting mad that they rejected him. It's such a mind fuck that has really trapped people in.
Yeah.
Nietzsche has an amazing quote on it saying that it's bait. It's the bait of vengeance, basically.
Hmm. And also, in this sense, Judeo-Christian values makes a lot of sense, in fact. It's a real concept. All of the early Christians were Jews. They're coming out of Judaism. It's Judaism 2.0. Even Judeo-Islamic values make sense in the sense that the Quran is clearly emerging from the Torah. It's the basic thing. The Muslims and the Arabs are the sons of Ishmael, who has a place in the Torah, a secondary place to Isaac and then Jacob and Judah, etc., but an important place. He's a son, biological son of Abraham and Hagar. So saying is Judeo-Islamic values, that totally makes sense. In fact, the conflicts in the Middle East are sort of about Judeo-Islamic values in the sense that they both ultimately consider this to be holy land, and they both look towards Jerusalem. A fundamental aspect of Islam is Muhammad's ride to Jerusalem, et cetera, et cetera. You can't get away with it. It's an intramural battle that's going on. Anti-Semitism, as we know it, Christian and anti-Semitism, is an intramural battle. You're not rejecting Judaism or rejecting God, that is Yahweh or Elohim, and the Torah. You're engaging in a kind of sectarian dispute, which can be the most vicious, to be fair, in a way. But
But it's
that's
still
what it
in the
is.
Judeo framework, like on the Torah plantation, and Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He is
Right.
the Davidic Messiah, who was David was the king of Judah. So it's Judeans, Jews. Jesus was the king of the Judeans, as it says in the birth narrative when the wise men came to visit him. So they say, "Where is the king of the Jews?" So yeah, these guys, it's clownish. And then to share this tweet and act like this is a huge W when like Ben Shapiro's like, "I want you guys to go to church. I don't want you to convert to Judaism, but I want you to be Noahides
Right.
and worship our God and believe in our prophecies and believe that we were once chosen." And then it still doesn't click for them. They still don't get it. My friend See Through It All has just posted a clip of Ben Shapiro explicitly saying he prefers Christianity to paganism.
Oh, of
And then
course he
people
would.
still don't get it.
Of course he would.